Alrighty, so welcome to Tuesday, October 13th. Alright, so we need to look over what our answers should have been on our homework. So if you already have your work submitted, make sure you check your answers. Now, if you haven't done your work, you can use this to check your work afterwards. But remember, all homework needs to be turned in with the work shown. Okay, you cannot just give answers. You have to show your work. So for 1 and 2, you should have gotten a -1/2, and 2 a -12 and 1/14. Okay, didn't get that? Try to look and see what mistakes you might have made. For 3 and 4, you should have had 1 and 11/12, and then 11 and 1/5. Okay, remember, if you add the opposite here, 4 is our larger value and it's a positive. Whereas with number 4, okay, if you're multiplying two negatives, this first negative cancels the other, so you actually get a positive product. All right, let's look at 5 and 6. You should have gotten a -19/24. And then 8 should have, not 8, number 6 should have been a -8 and 5/12. Our last two problems, 7 and 8. Okay, you should have gotten a -32. Once you've done all this of the multiplying your improper fractions, you actually got a negative whole number. Problem 8 was a 1 and 1/7. Okay, so if you have some you don't know quite sure how you got them wrong, make sure you go back, double check your work, or ask your teacher for some clarification of what you did wrong. And if you turned it into Smart Notebook, your teachers most likely have given you feedback of what mistake you might have made. Okay, yesterday we did the left side of our foldable. Okay, we did the fraction side. So today we're going to do that same foldable from yesterday, and we're going to do 4 decimal problems. Okay, our first one is an addition of 2 negatives that are decimals. So what are things we need to remember? Well, one, whenever we are adding or subtracting decimals, we have to line them up. Okay, so for where I need to remember, put a note that you need to line up decimals. Then also whenever we do our work, we need to also put the largest value on top. So if we end up needing to actually subtract, we already have the largest value. Okay? So when I look at this -10 and 3/10 plus a -29 and 78/100, I'm going to put my larger value on top, which is 29 is larger. And then my 10 goes underneath, and I have to add a 0 under my 8. Then I look, I have 2 negatives. I decreased twice, so that means I have to actually add these. And then because they are both negatives that I'm adding, my answer is a negative. So I can go ahead and figure that out before actually doing any of my work. And since my decimals are lined up, my decimals are going to go right there. Then we just add. 8 and 0 is 8. 7 and 3 is a 10. Then 1 plus 9 plus 0 is another 10. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is a 4. So if we were to take these two amounts and think of it as money, if you borrowed $10.30 one day, then you borrowed $29.78 another day, you owe the person you borrowed money from $40.08. Remember, if you owe money, that is a negative answer. Okay? Now let's look at the next one. So if you need to, pause just to fill in your notes. You can write your own pace in the video. First thing again, we must line up decimals. then because it is written as a subtraction problem, we need to add the opposite. So then we can follow our addition rules. I can't follow addition rules until it's written as an addition problem. So I go through and I look, I'm like, all right, so the first one stays as it is. Right, and that one's going to be my larger value. So I'm going to keep it as my 6, and then because this one has 2 place values, I'm going to add a 0. Then I'm going to look and I'm going to change this one to addition, and then the opposite of a negative is a positive. So now I have a negative plus a positive. Okay? Because this is different signs, you're actually going to subtract to find out your total distance between doing this. So then we put our 387 underneath. If I look, which one's a higher value? Well, my higher value is on top, and it's a negative, so my answer is going to be a negative. Okay? If I was to model this with a number line, if I was at, there's like a -7 and a -6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then a 0. This is just to give you a visual. Here's where I'm starting. Okay, that's my -6 and 2/10. I'm going to add. Remember when we talked about adding? You're going to add going this way a little more than 3. We'll find out if we actually end up past the 3 or not. If you notice, I'm still in the negative numbers. That's how we know it's a negative answer. Okay? All right, before we can do much, I actually got to do some borrowing and regrouping. I can't take 7 away from nothing. So this 2 now is a 1, and then this becomes 10, not 11. And then because I know also I'm not going to be able to take 8 away from 1, I'm going to go ahead and borrow from this 6 to make that 11. Now I can actually go through and do my subtraction. So 10 minus 7 is 3. 11 minus 8 is 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. And the decimals are lined up. So we actually end up a little bit more about that here. Okay, between a -2 and -3. Okay. Need to pause this to finish it up. Next, we're going to go on to multiplication and division. Now remember, multiplication and division have different rules. Okay. I don't need to line up my decimals. Okay. I normally will go ahead and put my larger value on top. Okay. Well, not really actually the larger value, the one with the most digits. I'm going to put most digits on top. That makes it easier. So when I go to actually multiply, I have my larger digits. That means the most work right there. I'm going to take it times 29.2. I don't need to line up those decimals. Okay. Then multiply as normal. And we can figure out before we actually even multiply, is my answer going to be positive or negative? If I have $1.45 and we're borrowing that 9 2/10 times, that means I'm going to be in the debt even more. So I know once I add all these numbers, I'm going to have a negative answer. All right, so let's multiply. First, multiplying by 2. This is a 10. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is a 9. 2 times 1 is 2. So remember, whenever you go to your next row, you've got to put a 0 right here. You can't leave it as it is, because now you're multiplying by these different place values. Now I can multiply by my 9, which is 45. 9 times 4 is 36, plus 4 is 40. 9 times 9 is 1, plus 4 is 13. Then let's add them. It is 0, 14, So 3, 3, and 1. So our next step is find out where does my decimal go. So that's the next thing we need to know. What is something you always have to remember? The amount of place values between both numbers. So you would add them. So add the amount. Okay. Add the amount of place values. Then that's how many times we move with the other one. Let's switch this color real quick to orange. We have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's how I know I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. My place value actually goes right there. Okay, so then that's our answer. Our answer is a negative 13, 340 thousandths. Okay, you need to pause this, fill it in, make notes if you have some extra questions. Our next one, we are dividing. Remember, our divisor has to be a whole number. A whole number. And our divisor is the second number. It's also the number that goes on the outside of our box. So this negative 4.5, if I move the decimal 1, is going to be my 45. Then, however many times I move that decimal, move it the same in the dividend. Oops, that's easy not to go. So we need to move same amount of places in the dividend. In other words, the number that we're dividing into. So that I move that one once, I'm moving this one after the 9 to in front of the 5. So we'll just do a 49.5. Now I can follow the rules, okay? So the opposite of my negative is a positive. So my answer is going to be a positive. I can figure that out so I don't forget about it later. Okay, so then we can do our work. 45 can go into 49 one time, then we subtract it. Now remember to put your 1 actually where my 9 is. So I'm taking it out of 49, not just 4. Then we subtract. Now this is where I see a lot of students make mistakes. Sorry, I'm distracted. Okay, thank you. A lot of kids make mistakes where they see 45 can't go into 40, so they just add the other number and then put a number there. You can't. You can't go in. You've got to put a 0. And of course, you move your decimal up where it is from the dividend. And I'm like, all right, how many times can 45 go into 405? Okay. So I know it's got to be less than 10. Okay, so let's see what 45 times 9 is. Well, that's 45, 36, and 4 makes 40. So it's exactly 9 times. Sometimes you have to do trial and error when you have such big numbers, and that is perfectly fine. Okay, if you have a multiplication table, bust that out if you're not ready for multiplication. So then when we say our final answer is a 10 and 9/10. Okay, that is the final of that one. So make sure that you have all your notes. You've got them glued into your notebook so that you are organized. Okay, then check in with what you are doing for today. Some of you will have your test tomorrow, okay, on Wednesday. So you need to make sure you are going through looking at old quizzes. And the way I would say to look at old quizzes is the ones you missed, cover up the answer, okay? Whatever answer the teacher told you, hey, this is what it should be. Rewrite the problem and see if you can solve it and get the correct answer the second time. If not, look at how you should have done it, okay? You gotta go back, look at all of your quizzes, And those will be great examples to prepare you for the unit test. Okay? Have a great evening.